By the time the next Bitcoin halving narrative takes over headlines again, most people will still be asking one question. What is the Bittensor price prediction? You are here for something else. You are here to understand why one network is quietly trying to become the sovereign rail for decentralized AI, long before the large funds admit how important that is. Right now, almost every serious artificial intelligence system lives inside a corporate fortress. The models sit on closed servers. The data lives in locked warehouses. And the incentives are controlled in boardrooms, not in open markets. Sounds efficient, right? Except it is not. Once intelligence itself becomes an asset class that can move across borders like capital. Because if intelligence is the new oil, whoever controls the pipelines does not just control user experience. They control risk, access, and in extreme cases, national security. Bittensor is an attempt to flip that. In simple terms, Bittensor is a blockchain network that pays independent miners, not for raw hashing power, but for useful intelligence. Network data suggests it already routes work across a global mesh of machines running models, scoring their outputs, and rewarding the ones that perform best. Think of it as a marketplace where every node is an AI service provider, and the ledger is the referee and the paymaster at the same time. Now here's where it shifts. Most of the market is still watching price candles and headlines. You are here studying the rails that could decide which AI systems even survive. Let us zoom out to the macro picture. We are in a world where energy, data, and compute are turning into geopolitical weapons. Governments are restricting chip exports. Cloud providers are locking clients into long contracts. And the largest AI labs are racing to scale models that cost millions of dollars to train. In that environment, a neutral, permissionless network that coordinates intelligence across many independent actors is not just interesting. It is strategically dangerous to ignore if you manage your own capital. Because if Bittensor works at scale, no single company owns the flow of intelligence. The incentives live on-chain. The routing logic lives on-chain. And the market, not a committee, decides which models deserve to be paid and which ones quietly starve. Most people stop at that surface description. That is their biggest mistake. The real story is the problem Bittensor is attacking underneath. Today, if you want to build on AI, you usually rent a closed API from a large provider. You send data in, you pay a fee, you get an answer back. You do not see how the model was trained. You do not control the incentives behind it. You cannot independently prove how that answer was produced. In consumer chat apps, that is annoying. In critical systems, that is unacceptable. Think about banks using AI to detect fraud patterns in real time. Hospitals using AI to triage patients. Industrial firms using AI to monitor infrastructure. If all of that flows through a handful of black box providers, you do not just have dependency. You have systemic concentration and single points of failure. Bittensor is built as an alternative rail. Its origin story is simple. A group of developers looked at Bitcoin and asked a basic question. If Bitcoin can coordinate energy to secure money, could a similar structure coordinate intelligence to produce useful work? Instead of miners competing to find blocks, what if miners competed to answer questions? Instead of one corporate model behind an API, what if thousands of models competed in public for rewards? That idea became a protocol. That protocol became Bittensor. And if this experiment works, it will not just change a token chart. It will change who controls the flow of intelligence itself. Now let us break down the technology in plain language. At the center of Bittensor is a system that does three jobs. It routes requests to different AI models. It scores the quality of their responses. And it pays the ones that contribute the most value back to the network. In simple terms, you can picture three roles. There are clients who ask questions, there are miners who run models and answer those questions. And there is the blockchain, which acts as the judge, the scoreboard, and the accountant. Developer updates indicate the network uses a mix of peer evaluation and on-chain incentives to decide which miners deserve more TAO rewards over time. If your model is lazy or low quality, you earn less. If your model is strong and consistently helps answer queries, you earn more. Over time, that pressure does something important. It forces competition on performance and cost, not on marketing. Now here is where it gets interesting. Because this structure does not care whether the best model sits inside a cloud region in the United States, a server in Asia, or a home lab in Europe. As long as it can prove its value to the network, it can compete for TAO. That is what sovereign AI looks like in practice, not as a slogan, but as a live incentive system. Let us move to real-world use cases. In its early stages, Bittensor has been used mostly by technically advanced users, research groups, and experimental applications that want access to a swarm of models instead of a single provider. Think about analytics tools that need multiple perspectives on the same data stream. Think about trading systems that want diverse model ensembles instead of one opinion that can fail all at once. Think about R&D teams that want to test ideas without sending every request to a centralized API gatekeeper. Public information suggests that some early adopters are already routing meaningful workloads through Bittensor subnetworks, not just for cost, but for structure. They are not only buying answers, they are buying independence, redundancy, and a chance to avoid being locked into a single vendor's roadmap. Very few people map this level of detail. If you understand this, you are already ahead of most investors staring at short-term charts. Now let us talk tokenomics. The native asset of the network is TAO. In simple terms, TAO does three jobs. It pays miners for useful intelligence. It is staked and bonded to secure different parts of the network. And it acts as the economic weight behind governance decisions about how the protocol evolves. Developer documentation describes a cap supply with issuance that rewards early contributors more heavily and then tapers over time. At the same time, the effective cost to attack or manipulate the network grows as more miners, more stake, and more intelligence plug in. This is where most retail participants open a chart and search for Bittensor price prediction targets and social media guesses. You are not most people. You are asking a harder question. What happens to an asset that sits at the center of a growing intelligence market if that market becomes systemically relevant to finance and infrastructure? Now let us talk adoption and smart money signals. On-chain patterns and public wallets indicate that some funds, high net worth individuals, and specialized crypto investors have been quietly accumulating TAO, not to flip it on the next pump, but to secure exposure to the network itself. Coins have flowed from exchanges into long-term holdings even during periods of sharp volatility. That does not guarantee an outcome, but it does tell you who is paying attention and where conviction is slowly concentrating. Most of the market is still arguing about which front-end chatbot feels smoother on a phone screen. You are watching where the rails for decentralized AI are actually being laid and where the incentives are crystallizing. Hold that thought, because now we need to be brutally honest about risk. First, Bittensor is still early. The tooling is not as polished as a consumer-grade AI dashboard. Running a miner or building on the network still requires real technical skill and operational discipline. If adoption stalls, the narrative can outrun reality, and early holders will feel that gap in their P&L. Second, there is concentration risk. If too much TAO or too much network power pools into a small group of actors, the promise of sovereignty weakens and governance becomes fragile. Third, regulation is a wild card. As governments focus more closely on AI and crypto together, a network that routes intelligence and value across borders will attract scrutiny and possibly friction. None of these are small issues. but they are also the reasons large institutions are studying this space now, instead of waiting for a neat narrative package in the next cycle. They understand that infrastructure with real usage and clear incentives tends to win, even if the path is messy. So what does the future outlook look like from your seat as a capital allocator? If Bittensor continues to attract miners, models, and stake, it could evolve into a neutral clearing layer for intelligence itself, a place where banks, funds, and enterprises tap into a pool of models while still keeping sovereignty over their data and routing logic. If it fails, it will likely be because the coordination problem of scoring and paying for intelligence at global scale is harder than it looks, and because centralized providers move faster with cleaner user experiences. Either way, the experiment is too important to ignore if you care about where value will accrue in the AI stack. For you, the strategic takeaway is simple. You do not need an aggressive Bittensor price prediction to see the asymmetry. If AI continues to centralize into a few corporate platforms, the world will look like today, just more concentrated and more fragile. If sovereign market-driven networks like Bittensor gain traction, the rails of intelligence start to look more like open finance. Multiple providers, transparent incentives, programmable access that any serious builder can wire into. Most investors will only notice when the narrative switches from AI tokens as memes to AI infrastructure as core allocation targets. You are here before that switch. You are here studying the rails, not just the candles. So the real question for you is not simply, will TAO go up? The better question is, how many credible shots do we have at decentralized AI becoming real infrastructure? And which of those shots is already live, routing actual work, with real capital at stake? Bittensor is one of the few networks that fits that description today. If you value deep research like this, subscribe to Crypto Wayfarer. Because we are not chasing hype, we are decoding infrastructure. Stay sharp, stay strategic, and keep wayfaring.